Today on the Athlete's Mindset, I'm joined by Tyler Goodro, a former professional baseball player who has since become one of the most respected catching instructors in the game. During his 5-year pro career, Tyler had the unique opportunity to catch multiple pitchers who went on to make it to the big leagues. After hanging up the cleats, Tyler dedicated himself to developing the next generation of players. With over 15 years of coaching, instruction, and scouting experience, he's worked with thousands of athletes across youth, high school, and collegiate baseball. He's also served as an area scout for both the Philadelphia Phillies and the Minnesota Twins. Today, Tyler brings a wealth of knowledge about catching, player development, and what it takes to maximize an athlete's potential both on and off the field. I'm excited for this conversation. Let's get into it. Tyler, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Tristan.
Yeah, happy to have you here. I mean, you're one of the more notable names in not only Nebraska when it comes to baseball, but also just in the catching world. Can you talk a little bit about just your journey as a player, being a catcher as a player at Cincinnati, and then going to pro ball, and then just getting into coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. I think where I started from is grew up in a family that was pretty athletic. So I think sports was always going to be my path, whether that be, I don't know, baseball was probably going to be the forefront of what I was going to do beyond just, playing select baseball and select basketball and doing stuff like that. But yeah, just had a passion for it. Like I said, grew up in a family that was very athletic, had an uncle who was a first round draft pick. He's the highest high school draft pick out of the state of Nebraska. And so having that side of that was on my mom's side, and then on my dad's side, my dad was a catcher, which has ultimately led me to being a catcher. I love to hit. It took me on the journey to that path. Had good, successful high school career, I guess you could say, and then again, I just fell in love with the game more than anything, which then again put me in where I wanted to take my journey in the sport of baseball as far as I could go. Like I said, I was a catcher. My dad basically made me a catcher. My brother was left-handed, so he was a pitcher. His career ended fairly, young, and I guess you could say in his life. But then, yeah, out of high school, had an opportunity to go play at an SEC school. Was actually committed and spent my fall of my freshman year at the University of Arkansas. Very eye-opening experience, you could say. There was about 55 guys, I think, in camp. When you're going through the recruiting process, as I'm sure you're aware of, they tell you everything and anything that you want to hear to get you on campus. So I was told that, you're going to be this guy on this day. And then, when it comes to the weekend, when we're playing against, SEC play, you're going to probably be a first baseman as well as DH. And then we're going to work into the role behind the plate. And none of that's ever true. And I think just high school itself didn't necessarily prepare me for the challenges that were ahead. Again, I guess you could call it what it was at that time when I was playing. I think the baseball world has exploded just with social media in today's world. The recruiting aspect of it, it's gotten obviously much more challenging than it ever has been. But eventually left there, went to a junior college, had some success at the junior college, and kind of was figuring out, what do I do? I tell people all the time now, in the day of the transfer portal, I feel like I spearheaded the transfer portal for how many schools I was at within, the 4-year, period of time playing. Was a good student. I think it was always taught to me that baseball or sports in general were a privilege, and you had to work for that. And so, graduated early, as a matter of fact, and was figuring out, what do I want to do? Obviously, I wanted to continue to play and play this game as long as I could. But coming out of junior college, it was kind of a shaky situation in a sense. Heard from summer coaches that you had offers here, and then from our junior college coach, that wasn't the case. And so never really had an advocate in this game at that point in time. didn't know, who to turn uh, to ask questions, but ultimately ended up at the University of Cincinnati. And people, I think, also asked me like, would you ever change anything? And I said, I'm comfortable. I'm happy with my life. I felt like after I got out of Cincinnati, I was not drafted. Ended up playing, or had an opportunity to catch bullpens at a very short period of time down in Dodger spring training one year, and then had a backup plan B was an independent contract. And so played 5 years of independent minor league baseball. Um, but I always felt like, and you hear this all the time as well, is that you can't play this game forever, but what you can do is you can coach. And I always gravitated myself. I wasn't a kiss ass, but I sat next to the manager. And if I wasn't playing, I would be in the bullpen. I would be asking questions to our relievers. I would just gravitate to different people, try to make myself a really good clubhouse guy. But yeah, it ultimately led me into, you know, coaching, especially from the position where I was at. I mean, independent baseball, yeah, you feel like you're closer than what you really are. But yeah, like I wouldn't change my path for anything. Very happy with where I'm at in my life, and it was a challenge, but it was a good experience. From start to where I'm at right now. I can't say finish because I'm not done coaching, but where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's kind of the similar path that a lot of players take, going from being a player into coaching. And I mean, I coached this past spring, and I think the coolest part about it was just in my 4 years of playing college baseball, I learned so much and probably got a lot of advice that I should have taken way earlier. And it's not until you're done playing that you're like, oh, I guess I did put a little bit too much pressure on myself. But it's
Right.
just nice to kind of give back. And like, I learned so much, and it's cool to teach, especially high school athletes. I wish I knew this at your age. And if you can implement
Yes.
this or just have this idea that, not every strikeout is life or death or anything like that. And so I think that's something that helped me, especially as I got into coaching. And I mean, even as a player, like you said,
Yes.
I struggled with having just kind of a pathway or have an idea of what my identity
Mhm.
was. And I think that's something that's so tough. But when you get into coaching, it's so easy to just like fall in love with helping the next generation.
No doubt. No doubt. I think building off of what you just said there too, it's so I grew up in kind of a single parent family. In a sense, my dad wasn't around a lot. He played for a legendary Hall of Fame coach at Oklahoma State when Oklahoma State was kind of a powerhouse in college baseball at the time. And like I said, he was a catcher, which ultimately led me to becoming a catcher, I guess. And people always, say, "Oh man, you're too tall to be a catcher." But anyways, um, I think for me, as you just talked about like every at bat, it's not life or death. But I never had that car ride home where it was like, you did this wrong or you did this wrong. So I put a lot of the pressure on myself. And um, you know, now take a step back. I remember I was talking to a guy who was at one point in time, I want to say he was a catching coach for the St. Louis Cardinals. And he said he goes, the further you're away from the game, the easier it gets. Right. And so when you're in the trenches, you're in the game, you're faced with unexpected challenges. It's tough, right? And how do you cope with that? And I never had that, so I was always very oh, what am I looking for? I was always very just interested and curious as to how can I improve. And I think which the paradigm shift, what you've seen now in baseball, it was very like, uh, you got to do it this way. You're listening to some of these guys that have done it, but is that the right way for me personally? And now I just have a whole wide perspective of how do I approach the athlete, and it's building the relationship more than anything. And like I said, I was a sponge in a sense when I wasn't playing. I was listening to the coaches. What were they doing? What's the strategy behind this? But it ultimately led me to how do I approach not just the 10 athletes that might be in this, catching academy session. How do I approach each one individually? What's going on in their lives, so to speak? And so, no, I thought it was a good point that you brought up about the the whole life or death kind of scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I struggled with kind of imposter syndrome my freshman year getting into Fullerton. Like I was at
Yeah.
Cal State Fullerton, and I think that fall I would watch all the guys that were older, maybe guys that were draft prospects, and be like, I got to do exactly what they're doing, the drills
Right.
they're doing in the cages, or have their mindset when I'm in the box. And I was like, I'm getting to a point where like I felt so far away from who I was as a player, and every time a coach gave me instructions or anything, I think I just like took it and ran with it. It was like, oh, you need to move your hands just a little bit, and I'm like, all right, I'll get them way up here, and it got to a point where I just like felt so little like myself on the baseball field. And that was just one of the struggles that I had. And I'm kind of curious. And then it took me a while to understand, like, all right, I need to be me if I'm going to have
Mhm.
success in this game. Did you have any kind of like of those challenges or challenges of your own, getting into college or even in just pro ball?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, yes. 1000% with that. I it wasn't necessarily the imposter syndrome of sorts of what this guy's doing. It was more or less like I didn't understand my identity, right? Why did this guy get drafted? Why didn't I get drafted? Why and it was a lot of the whys. Why? Um, why is this guy hitting in the 3 hole and why am I hitting in the 8 hole? Or why is this kid catching and I'm not catching? Or it was a lot of that. So it was a lot of questions I was asking internally. Um, how did it how did it affect me? It affected me in some ways in a positive way, in some ways in a negative way. Uh, I'll talk about a very, very kind of personal incident that took place. So when I got to Cincinnati, I was like, all right, I mean, out of high school, I was at University of Arkansas. I mean, at that time when I went to Arkansas, they were just coming off of their first College World Series appearance I think like 20 years or something like that, and they were probably a top 25 program, and now they're a top 3 program every year, it seems like. Um, but after I left that and went to I went to the junior college route and then went to Cincinnati, I get there and I'm like, man, I'm super confident in who I am. And I actually injured my knee. I tore a medial meniscus. I did my right one in high school and my left one in college. And I'm like, all right, I've been through this before. I came back, not 100%, but I came back from it. But it took me out of pretty much the entire fall. And I rehabbed it, probably made my left one, which I did, like I said, in college, much stronger than my right one. And we're getting prepared to start team practices after the Christmas break. And a lot of our guys are getting at bats. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why the heck am I not getting at bats here? Like, I got to be ready to go. I'm a junior. I've, I was basically out all fall, and I probably wore a lot of my emotions on my sleeve, a ton, to the point where, like I said, I would gravitate to certain coaches, one of which was our pitching coach who had played at Oklahoma State. And so when I was talking to him, I would talk to him, oh, my dad played for Gary Ward. I know you played for Gary Ward, yada, yada, and so on and so forth. And so I had kind of that connection with him. And I kind of just told him, I said, man, like, if I'm not going to play here, I need to get ready for, to play because I want to get drafted. I want to play professional baseball. I feel like I'm a top talent that's hasn't been given that true opportunity. So can you help me find somewhere to play in the summer? And he kind of went back. I think he went back to his or the head coach, and he was like, "Hey, we got a disgruntled player here, yada yada." And he pulls me aside. We're about 4 days away from leaving for our first series, which was against number one ranked Miami Hurricanes. I mean, you talk about big league galore over the field, but he walks up to me and he says, "Hey, I heard you're kind of upset." And I said, "Well, I just want to understand, like, how can I get some more at bats?" And I took that opportunity each time. Let's say I got two a day, uh, you know, and some guys were getting 8 a day. I was back there catching, of course, and I was doing really well. And but anyways, he said to me, he goes, I think I look at it this way, Tyler. You're third in line for catching. You're the third string in terms of first base, and you're third string for our DH role. So enjoy your time at Cincinnati." And I was like, what do I do with that? And I just thought to myself, well, like, is he challenging me to work harder? And if that's the case, then yeah, I will work harder. And so I started to go up to our facility. We had key card access. We get in there late at night. And as a matter of fact, there was a guy who lived in town nearby it's a very rural campus. It's close to our downtown. But Greg Zahn, he's like 14, 15-year big leaguer. And then there was another guy that played at Cincinnati who he and I became pretty good friends. He was getting into pro ball at that time too. So we would hit, gosh, damn near 10 o'clock at night till 1 o'clock in the morning. We'd work on some different things. It was nice to have a guy that had big league status there. They were giving me the confidence of like, hey man, just keep doing what you're doing, work hard. When you catch the bullpens, catch the bullpens. But we go down to Miami, and I'm the bullpen catcher for game one. We lose game one. I'm the bullpen catcher for game two. We lose game two. And then the Sunday game, all of a sudden my name's in the lineup at the DH spot. I think I was hitting a-hole that day. And, you got Yasmani Grandal, who's behind the plate. You got Yonder Alonso, who's at first base. Jemiah Weeks, Ricky Weeks' brothers at second. I mean, like I said, it was first round, second round, and then probably combined, 40, 50 years of big league experience that was on the field. Obviously, this is college at the time. And one of our guys, guy who eventually played about over 10 plus years in the big leagues, he walks out of Coral Gables with a 0.000, batting average, and here I am, and I go 2 for 4, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, here's my start. I was given this opportunity. I think I laid down a sacrifice bunt. So I did my job, and the playing time didn't increase. It was just but I was always kind of like, what is the next step? What is he trying to do? Is there an ulterior motive to what he's doing? And there was no communication. I feel like, in a lot of these programs and coaches, I'm sure you experience this too, is like, what's their plan for us? And I think bullshit. We should be taking a hold of our plan. Like, what's
Yeah.
our plan look like? What do we feel like? And so, it was an interesting time frame. I mean, I caught in total at University of Cincinnati. I think I caught in 2 innings. I played a total of 3 innings, or no, I'm sorry, total of 7 innings at first base. As a matter of fact, I pulled my groin because one of our guys decided he was going to take some sort of, like, I don't know what the heck it was, to clean off the base, so he made the base slick. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, but I was proud of the opportunities that I got. I did challenge the coach a couple of times. I did have some sit down meetings with him, and I thankfully I graduated early, so I actually had a year of eligibility left, and decided that my best opportunity was try to get into professional baseball as soon as I could. But yeah, it was just, I don't know if that answered the question. I know that's kind of long winded, but go down that rabbit hole. But like, you know, I always just thought to myself, like, I have certain things. I've trained a lot of kids. At one point in time during a month of our training this last year, we had 115 kids. And how do I have a touch point with each kid that walks through the facility? What's that relationship look like? Are there kids that are going to play varsity baseball? Are there kids that are going to be done after this year? Well, I still want to have some sort of an impact on their life.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I struggled with at Fullerton, especially with the new coaching staff my sophomore year. And you could kind of tell like pretty early they were going to bring in their own guys. And
Right.
so like a lot of guys in my class ended up leaving after that year. But there would be a few practices or even weeks where it seemed like I didn't have a conversation with a coach. And so I'm kind of curious just on, I mean, transitioning to the coaching side is how do you, I mean, one, be just upfront with a player, but then also like build a relationship. Cause I mean, it goes so much farther than just being a coach on the field telling a guy, how to swing. It's more, it's
Right.
about, how they're doing, one as a person outside of baseball. So how do you kind of build that relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. I think first and foremost is that for me personally, like I said, I didn't have that father figure who was around. So, and I'm not trying to be their dad by any means, but I want them to know that I relentlessly care about what they're doing. And I heard Don Mattingly say this one time. I think there was a special that they did on him. on the MLB Network. He goes, the player's success is my success. If the player's failing, then I'm failing as a coach and as a person. I think when I jumped into coaching, I was always doing minor league baseball players. They don't make jack squat unless you got a nice signing bonus, and that's even wrapped up in probably investments. The smart ones put it in investments and whatnot. But for me, it was you know, at that point in time, I was trying to find again, I think go back to the word identity, who I was as a coach. Am I giving the best information? It was very hard for me. I think, I got put into doing some hitting classes at one point in time. I'm like, I can't work with 10 guys at once because I want this one kid who's really struggling to walk out of here, feel like he accomplished something. So I was trying to find how can I do it in a mass setting? What can I do? What conversations can I give or have with them about what it is that they may be faced with, in terms of adversity. But I wanted to start with again, I'm here. I care about you. I care about your well being. But I think it all starts with understanding, maybe why we do something. I think coaches sometimes they say go do, go do, go do. Yes, this is the way, this is what we're doing here, and the game's unpredictable and stuff, but like you got to understand why you do what you do. um I after for so long I said maybe I can get into a higher coaching role. What's if I can't make it to the big leagues as a player, can I make it to the big leagues as a coach? And so I went down that path for it's still there, but it's not necessarily something that I'm gunning for. But as far as that path, I mean, I started looking at, okay, how can I get back into a dugout? How can I get into a uniform? And so back in the summer of 2023, I actually the last independent team I played for, the Lincoln Salt Dogs, I asked, hey, is there opportunity for me to come down and be like a bench coach, coach, bullpen catcher? I mean, I'll do whatever I can. I'll rake the field. Obviously, at Haymarket Park, they got one of the best playing surfaces. So, what can I do to get myself in there? And I feel like the pro game is totally different from the college game and obviously the high school game. I think at the high school level, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but like I feel like the high school level, they're always looking for answers as
Okay.
opposed to them trying to figure out the solution to the problem. Um, and so when I learned that, I think a lot from just being around a lot of different professional guys, and understanding like they don't want mass changes. And I think that's even with young kids, they don't want mass changes. And I feel like too that the younger generation, a lot of coaches tend to coach the athleticism out of players. And so when I was looking at that from the perspective of, all right, a lot of these guys in this independent rank, some have been, as high as AAA, some guys are rookies just out of college. What is it that they need? And started asking questions more or less. What are you struggling with? What can I help with? Maybe it's just me feeding the machine. Maybe it's me, giving some insight. I think the player today cares less about what we did as players and more so about how we can get them to that next step. And then after that summer season was over, I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to coach Division I baseball, and more or less, as a catcher, I feel like has really helped me as a coach is being observant. What's taking place? What are you guys doing to be challenged? What are you guys doing on a regular days basis? What do your routines look like? But I think it all starts and goes back with the what's the purpose, what's the why,
Mhm.
and then how do we formulate plans there.
Yeah. I think figuring out the why is one of the most important things, especially as a coach. I mean, we kind of joked around in college a few times and it was just like, why are we doing this at practice? And it was like, oh, it doesn't make sense. That's why we're doing it.
Right.
And that was just kind of a common theme. And I feel like so many times as a player, you don't get the answers that maybe you're looking for. Even in your case at Cincinnati, you didn't really get any answers
Hmm.
on what you really needed to do to get to where you wanted to be. So that's a struggle that I think a lot of players have right now, and just having a little bit of guidance or even someone in their ear just telling them like, hey, like take a deep breath. Like, if you work on these things, then
Okay.
you'll get better in this aspect. And I was a guy in high school that anytime I struck out, I would go back to the dugout or popped out. I'd get in the dugout and be like, what did I do wrong there? What was wrong with that
Right.
swing? What was wrong with this swing? It was like, there was nothing wrong. Like, I feel like I was changing my swing every single week.
Right.
But just having someone like some guidance like you, especially in the catching realm, but also hitting side of it, is just like, you don't need the drastic changes all the
You
time.
don't. Mhm. You don't.
Um,
I think to piggyback up what you just said, um, it's are we asking the right question to the problem? Is it, all right, what did I do mechanically, or or why didn't I throw this guy out at second, or why didn't I field this ground ball? And it's like, well, you know, did going back to the hitting aspect, did you get a good pitch to hit, right? Did you swing at a good pitch, right? Or did you fumble your transfer? Whatever it might be. I feel like we get so ingrained about, yes, what's wrong, when we have to understand and realize that, yeah, from just an overall picture, like, it just wasn't your time, right? That
yeah.
guy made a great pitch, or this guy is just a little bit faster, or whatever, right? And so I'm with you on what you just said. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, Kind of staying with the catching side, what are
Hmm.
some mistakes maybe or struggles you're seeing in a lot of I mean catchers at every level, whether it's high
Yeah.
school, collegiate, youth, professional, what are just some kind of mistakes physically, I guess you're seeing, and even mentally that you see often?
Yeah, so I'll start with the physical aspect of it. I think a lot of it is has to do, just again, just strength in the body, um, and then the mobility aspect of it. I think that's a big aspect that I see. A lot of kids don't spend enough time, I think, about what athletic movements that take place in it. So let's say majority. So I run a catching academy. Um, in town here, and I think a lot of what doesn't, well, on their own, I think that's a big thing, but they don't spend enough time on performing explosive movements from certain positions. I think that's a really big aspect of what I see. And I think the other thing too is that there's been such a paradigm shift from the old school way. How I was judged as a catcher was, you know can you swing it, and then can you throw it? I think that still plays merit when you're recruiting, especially if you're going to go to a top line school where they do have a guy that might have somebody that is well versed in the background of catching. But now it's like, how well can you receive the pitch? Um, and I think, at the high school level, or at least the amateur level, you know, yes, do I believe that you want to be a really good receiver? 1000%, because you want the pitcher who's on the other end of it and the guy that's sitting behind you to think, man, like, that's really good. Okay, that's a strike, and you want him to feel comfortable for you. But I think one of the biggest things that gets missed is the arm strength. I think the prerequisite for the next level is the arm strength aspect of it. So I take it upon ourselves, and I'll tell you briefly, and we'll get into the mental side of it. But when I started my catching program, we were doing 1 day a week, 4 times a month. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this is just not enough. You got kids that are going other places. They might not start their actual practices until January. High school, as you know, doesn't start their stuff. And yeah, and training has, slowly, but it's starting, now. Kids are playing fall baseball, football. They're coming off of that. But I was like, they're not throwing enough. They're not getting stronger enough, and they don't know how. Am I really saying that I'm an expert into it? No, but I've learned enough to, and I don't want to say that I learned enough to be dangerous, but I've learned enough to know uh, how to do it, and why we need to do it, and what we need to do. But I think that's one of the big things that gets missed from a physical standpoint. I think now, shifting into the mental side of it, I don't think we visualize enough. And I think from that perspective, it's not, you're playing stuff in your head, but if you're visualizing yourself doing something, so one drill that we do for guys when we work on throwing is we make them close their eyes. We put them in different positions. But I'm like, you're in a constraint, unorthodox position. How do you get yourself out of it? Visualize first, and then let's see what happens. But I think that gets missed entirely too much. If I see myself being successful, okay, I can talk it to myself as well. And, I think, at the youth level, and the high school level, you're not going to have regardless if at the big league level, they're giving you a 15-second pitch clock, you're probably having less time at those levels. Uh, but okay, coach called a 0-2 banger. Where do I expect this at? What am I want to do? Is this one of the best pitch or best hitters that's in this lineup at the plate right now? Do I expect this breaking ball to hit the dirt, or can I snag a strike? So I think it's visualizing yourself, putting yourself again in that best position, but it's based upon you playing the scenario that takes place before it hits.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer in, just a positive outlook leads to a positive outcome. And a negative outlook leads to a negative outcome. And I think at first everyone talks about the visualization piece. And I was just like, what is this really going to do anything for me? It's not real life. Right. And then I started to get into it, and it was like more just giving myself the feeling of the confidence that, okay, I can succeed. Like if like things can go well if I just,
Right.
do this work that I've seen it happen already. Now I just need to make it happen. And there were so many times that, I'd just be in my own head screaming at myself for chasing a pitch or something. And I'm like, I'm so not present anymore, and my thoughts are negative, and I expect myself to just get a hit now.
Yeah.
Or in the catching experience, you have a pass ball and you're just, in your own dome about it. And it's like, oh, I expect to
Yes.
just frame the next one perfectly. And I think that's something that I mean, collegiate players are still doing it, professional players are still doing it, but especially at the high school level, I think that's where you see that the most.
Yeah, I think it's like it's not a life or death experience. I think you mentioned that earlier. It's not a life or death experience. And I think the problem is this is that we're so we're so result oriented, right? Um, Positive outcome versus a negative outcome. What's going to happen? There's if I don't make this play, is it on me? Did I lose the game? And players just don't know how to cope with it. I often joke with friends of mine who are instructors, from all the knowledge that we've learned, right? Could I go back in and be a successful player, right? And I was like, oh man, I know I can go up against this guy and you
I'd be
know,
hitting 600 right now if I was still
right,
playing.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like if I stepped in the box right now, I could hit Paul Skeens. Like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, 100%. Probably not, but
Yeah.
but you have the confidence, and then you have that. You trust all the training that you've done, and I think one of the biggest things too as a coach, being a former player and what I encourage our guys to do, because we do have so many guys at one point in time. I always try to get our seniors to understand, like, and if you're going off and playing, we had I think 11 seniors this past year. All 11 are playing college baseball, which is awesome. But what I've encouraged them to do, or what I encourage them to do as they get closer and closer towards the end, is like, guys, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be that guy, like this kid right over here, who's uncomfortable. He's nervous. He doesn't know what's going on here. How are you going to react when you have a senior who's got the accolades to his name, or he just transferred in, or something like that, that has some pedigree to his background? How are you going to interact with them? Or are you going to be that guy that's just going to be like, no, I'm going to, yeah, obviously you want the confidence that you're going to beat him out of his position, but how are you going to interact with, are you going to be a bad teammate because this guy's getting more reps than you? And I looked at myself that way too, and bringing in my experience at Cincinnati, like I'm a junior. We had a freshman catcher who I still talk to. He's awesome. And I was at Cincinnati for a very short period of time. Um, but like, what if I help him, that's helping our ball club. And this is a selfish game, but I'm helping our ball club succeed. And maybe that's going to make me a better player for learning it, teaching it to him, which is ultimately, I think, what happens in coaching is we take all that information and we start to give it back. Um, but I feel like that, you know, that's what I try to again push on to our older guys. Hey, you're in position now. Don't be a jerk. Don't be a bad clubhouse guy. Like, this is our clubhouse here. Don't be a bad clubhouse guy because that guy's competing with you. I had guys that were, you know, I had a senior and a junior at the same school. I've had seniors, juniors, freshmen at the same school. Like, take this kid along, right? Like, bring him along. It's going to make you better for it because you're going to understand it faster. You're going to understand how to cope with a failure. You're going to see what he does incorrectly, and you're probably going to think about to yourself, man, I made that same mistake.
Mhm.
How do I fix it? So
Yeah.
that's how we
I
approach it.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page. I mean, because I especially just think about, my playing career and the guys I played with, and I don't remember the stats of pretty much anyone else. I mean, I think
Right.
pretty much everyone's worried about, their own performance and everything. But I definitely remember the teammates that were great teammates and like, gave me confidence or asked how I was doing and were just like good relationships.
Yep.
And that, I mean, that's how people remember you. It's just how you treated them. And then also like, did you help them? Did you,
Hmm.
every time they talked to you, was it a positive interaction? Like, did you make their day better or did you make it worse? And so I think that's so important when it comes to being a good teammate, kind of transitioning to, you being a scout and, evaluating talent. You still are. What are some just kind of characteristics you look for in young players who are trying to or have dreams to play Division I baseball or professional baseball?
Yeah. So and for me, I think number one, when you show up to a ballpark or something like that, number one, you're going to look for an athlete, right? Are they athletic from a physical side? What physical tools do they possess? I think, as it leads into kind of more of the mental or the characteristics that you were talking about, the character of the player. How is he? Is he a gamer or is he that vocal, type? I'm going to lead by my physical tools, or I'm going to lead by my voice. And I think leadership is number one. Now, I always talk about being a servant leader. One of my good friends, he's the catching coach for the Tigers. He always talks about servant leadership. Serve to lead. And that's what you have to do from a catching perspective. Number one is like you got to serve. Who are you serving? Well, you got to serve your pitching staff. Like, that's number one. And you got to be an extension of the coach on the field. That's number two. Number three, you got to serve the umpire, because that guy's controlling the game, and you got to control emotions all around you. And then you're last. I mean, you're last, and I think again, it just makes you more confident. It makes you stronger, strong-minded by doing so. But I want to look for those players and see how they interact with their teammates around them. I think that's very important. What do they do? What is their how do we get to a point to see what kind of person they are outside of the ballpark? Are they guys that are involved in the community? I mean, I know that in some high schools, in a sense, like, guys, they have to do community projects. Are they engaged in the community projects or are they not? So I think a lot of that has to do with it. You know, how do they talk to their coaches, right? Are they respect their coaches? Are they I like players too. I think at a certain point is it's not just being a yes man. I think that's something to be said. I think that shows maturity. But I want to be challenged as a coach, right? I don't want to be your buddy, in a sense, but I want to be challenged. I want to know that if I'm not up to par, I always constantly ask guys to, um, beyond the scouting side, like, what am I doing? What can I do to improve what I'm doing to you? Am I communicating enough? So I want to see guys that do stuff like that. I think that's extremely important for them. But yeah, I think from, as I'm looking at, are we ever going to find a perfect player? Is a good five tool player, and that sixth tool being, kind of the baseball IQ aspect of it. And there may be a seventh tool, which might be the leadership quality of it. Probably not, but what do they know who they are as a player? I think that's important too. Um, Obviously I'm not going to be the guy that runs the fastest. Okay, what do I do with that limitations? And how do I improve our team? I remember watching. This is years ago. I wasn't scouting. I think I was, but I went down and watched Creighton's practice in town, and there was a catcher, Mike Amodi, uh, played at Creighton Prep where I went to high school, and Mike, I think, was a sophomore at the time, and there was guys ahead of him. I mean, in terms of just, as far as, grade level, but like Mike was basically running the practice. And it was awesome to watch, and just watching his voice and how he kind of, um, you know, got everybody focused or refocused on certain things. And I think that's important too. Mike probably wasn't the fastest, probably didn't hit the ball the farthest, but he commanded the field. And one thing that we would do when I was at UNO is I would have Monday morning sessions with our catchers. We had 4 catchers at the time, and I always my catching academy is called the Field General Catching Academy. So we would lay out. I'd have a whiteboard and at our ballpark, and I would say, okay, give me the qualities of a field general. What do we need to work on? Like, what is it? And I just said, say anything you want. Like, it doesn't have to be the right thing. I think that's the other thing too. Servant leadership is, you know, l- how do I say this? Servant leadership is serving somebody even though you may not like them, right? It's serving them regardless, and I think that's just again one of the big qualities I search for.
Today's episode is brought to you by ReLyte Hydration, my go to for staying fueled and refreshed. As a former athlete, I know how important it is to stay hydrated. And ReLyte makes it simple with clean ingredients and essential electrolytes. My 2 favorite flavors, lemon lime for that crisp, classic kick, and mixed berry when I want something a little sweeter. Whether it's before a workout, during a long day, or after training, ReLyte keeps me going. You can try it yourself and get 15% off with my code Athletesmindset at checkout. That's Athletes Mindset for 15% off at ReLyte. Stay sharp, stay hydrated. I think that's great stuff. And not only does leadership mean a ton, but just being an
Mm,
awesome human being. I think that's kind of
yep,
one thing that you always look out for. And the players who are not afraid to fail or like aren't afraid to, not in a disrespectful way, but ask their coach, like, hey, why are we doing this? Like you said earlier,
mhm,
you got to know the why. And I think that's just, it's so important. And I think being a leader is just one of the best qualities you can have, not only in a game of baseball, obviously, but just in life in general, is just being a
right,
positive impact, getting the most out of someone else. So I think that's great. And I think a lot of young players need to kind of just recognize that and say, like, yeah, I don't have to be the greatest athlete. I don't have to be the best player on the field, but I can still make a positive impact on someone else. Um,
absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about, I mean, just how you've dealt with so many different levels of players. What do you
Mhm.
think are like the biggest differences from high school to collegiate to professional, more just in like a catching aspect?
Yeah, so I think as far as like the catching, or from a high school perspective, I think a lot of it has to do with strength. And I think and I believe this. I shouldn't say I think, but I believe this. Their development stalled. I can only do so much in regards to them understanding just how to be a game manager. I think that's a lost art, because whether that's at the high school level or that's at the collegiate level, uh, a lot of those catchers don't really understand how to manage the game, what the preparation looks like. A lot of these guys, they end up getting, out of high school or out of college, and they get drafted and they have to learn a lot of this stuff. Like, what does it take? It's not just, yeah, when the game goes, like, it's in between the lines, but you're always going to second guess yourself. Did I call the right pitch? But I think that's one thing that gets lost a lot is just how to be a really good game caller. Is there an exact science to it? No, but it's a lot of experience and feel and failure. And uh, for me personally, I was fortunate enough to, when I was in high school, I asked our coaches. I just said, hey, can I call the game? I want to try to call in the game. And so they said, "Yeah, absolutely." And, every once in a while we might, holler at you to look over, and we want a suggested pitch and so on and so forth. I just felt like for me, learning that at a young age, and I'm a student of the game, and I love the game so much that I continuously watch it. How do I improve not only myself personally? I think it's never-ending learning experiences that you have to go through. But I think that's one of the major differences between from a high school player to a professional player is like your preparation. I think is another thing too. I think uh, as it pertains to my catching academy, it's we try to make it a pretty rigorous, 6 months or 5 months, depending upon how long they're doing our program for. But what I try to train them to do is to prepare, and I think that's another lost. I shouldn't say it's lost, but I think that's another thing that a lot of kids are unprepared for, I guess, in a sense, when they get to those next levels. How do we prepare? It's something as simple as, all right, guys, we use a ton of pitching machines here. We do a ton of drills here. I don't want you to master the drill, but can you prepare yourself to get in position? Like if you caught, you know, John Smith last week, what did you struggle on? Are you journaling or taking, internal notes to say, I struggle at this, maybe I'm going to do this on the side. I'm going to go, you know, as far as maybe receiving a breaking ball. I got to work on him because I'm going to catch him in a few days. So I think a lot of that has to do with it. So the game management aspect of it, again, pitch calling, and then I think it's not being scared of what you're doing from time to time. But yeah, I think a lot of these kids just don't know how to prepare, and that's what I try to do in my training is I call it like the old kind of karate kid type training, right? Wax on, wax off, and well, why the heck am I doing this? I'm not learning any karate. Well, all right, show me wax on, wax off, and
Hmm.
boom, all of a sudden you deflect a punch or something like that or a
Yeah.
kick. I think for me, it's just it's them taking ownership of it as well. When you're in professional baseball, yeah, you have coordinators, you have coaches, you have multitude of different people. There's all the analytics for you there to understand who you are from a physical and from just a mechanical standpoint. But um, you know, can you build your own plan yourself? And then can you reach out? Do you have the gumption to reach out to people and again ask those questions, why or how, or does what do you think? And then it's just internalizing a lot of that information and deciphering what's good, what's bad, and again putting together your plan so you can prepare.
Yeah. I mean, that's all great stuff. And I'm a firm believer that, all battles, maybe, or most battles, if not all, are won before they even happen. And it's just
Right.
because of who prepares better. I think you can see that on the baseball field often when you see, a lineup get in the box and you just see they all have the same approach and they're all ready to hit. And in other sports too, I think football especially, you'll just see like one team go out there and it's like they looked like they knew the play every single time and they
Right.
executed everything. So I'm a firm believer in preparation. One last question I ask all my
Yeah.
guests is, if you could just go back and tell your younger self, your playing self, one piece
Hmm.
of advice, what would it be?
Phew, it's a great question. I mean, number one, I would say, um, you know, well, number one, stretch.
Hmm.
I'm not the most mobile person, but and then the recovery aspect. I think eh, that's a big portion of it too. And then, I could go probably pretty deep with this, but I would say for me, from a physical aspect, would be how do I get myself more limber and
Hmm.
stretch. And number two is just uh, don't be don't be so reserved, I think
Hmm.
is the right thing. I think it's okay to be vulnerable,
100%.
because you don't know everything, right? And I think I Oh, I I distance myself from people that I probably shouldn't have, I guess, because the position that I played is you're in a service role, right? You're
Mhm.
serving your team in a lot of ways, but I think it was just not be so reserve. It was again, it's okay to be vulnerable in the game. I think that's a lot of things too. I act like that. I'm not reserved from people now, but it's okay for you to not know everything.
Yeah.
And I felt like sometimes I'm gonna give you another example, but I feel like sometimes too, like I felt like I had to be right.
Mhm.
We're doing rundown situations at the University of Cincinnati, and like I said, I wasn't playing a lot. This was in one of our weekday practices where we're just working on rundowns. I was the first baseman, and I kind of shared some emotion out loud to our head coach and to the other people that were around us, and I felt like he was wrong, and I would have just said, "Yep, you're right, whatever." But I didn't do that, and so I think that's the other thing too. Is just allow yourself to be a little bit more vulnerable, and like I said, I think that's allowed me to open up,
Yeah.
to more athletes, and athletes to open up themselves to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that brings out the human side of it too, which is so
Yeah,
important. And Tyler, I just want to thank you for coming on today. Your insight, your wisdom has been awesome. And you've made just a huge impact on so many catchers and just players in general, not only in Nebraska, but all over the country. So I appreciate you coming on today.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. This is great.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Tyler.
You bet.
Thank you again to Tyler for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.